A massive first week of finals has just concluded, and there were some big moments throughout all 4 games. In this video, I'm going to be looking back at the week that was in footy and picking apart what went right for all the winners and what went wrong for the losers. So without further ado, let's get straight into things. The 2024 final series started off on a Thursday night at the Adelaide Oval, and this result really did capture just how unpredictable this season can be. It was a 2nd v 3rd matchup between Port Adelaide and Geelong, with Port Adelaide having the longest winning streak of any club coming into the final series. Geelong had been a bit shaky coming into the major rounds, and many, including myself, didn't really give them much of a shot at winning this game, but they came out and absolutely annihilated Port Adelaide, smacking them by 84 points. Now really, I should have seen this result coming given Port Adelaide's recent form in finals. However, I was fooled into believing this Port Adelaide team was different to previous years and that they weren't just going to crumble into a heap come finals this time. But boy was I wrong. Now I would like to also issue an apology to Geelong for ever doubting them, because as long as Chris Scott is their head coach, you can never doubt this Geelong team. They are just far too resilient. Their pathways for creating and finding talent are just pretty much immaculate. Their game plan, they always seem to find a way to counter just about any opposition's game plan, and that was on full display on Thursday night. They completely picked apart Port's defensive structure, and the result was just a complete demolition. I mean, take a listen to Chris Scott before the game. He pretty much perfectly foreshadowed exactly what was going to happen in this game.
And our observation is that they prioritise that contest above all else, which sometimes can mean that behind the ball, if they do get beaten in the midfield, they can be maybe a little bit vulnerable, or at least have to defend in space. They don't tend to sit back and support too much.
You can see there that Chris Scott perfectly predicted how the game would pan out if they got all their game day strategies working. Geelong clearly had a focus on the contest and stoppages all night, as this is clearly an area of strength for Port Adelaide, with Jason Horne-Francis, Zach Butters and Connor Rozee all a part of their midfield brigade. However, that trio was no match for Geelong's midfield on the night, with Max Holmes in particular putting on a clinic and putting Port Adelaide to the sword. As a result of Geelong's midfield domination, just like Chris Scott said, Port's backline was put under the pump the whole night, with their main key backs forced to defend one-on-one without the support of their midfielders, allowing for the Geelong forwards to have a lot of space to work with. When I was watching this game on Thursday night, one of the main things that stood out to me was how much space the Geelong forwards were afforded, because usually in the modern game, teams are so good at guarding space and just clogging up as much of the defensive 50 as possible, but there was absolutely none of that from Port Adelaide, and this can be seen in some of the clips I've put up on screen now. These are just a few of the examples I can remember where Geelong were just able to pinpoint their way inside 50 and hit up easy leading targets in the pocket or directly in front of goal. Well, we've talked about the winning team enough, so it's time we take a look at Port Adelaide and specifically their coach Ken Hinkley, because right now Port Adelaide fans are not happy. And at the end of the day, I can see why, because I just don't think that Ken Hinkley is the man that's going to take Port Adelaide to its next premiership. I just can't ever see it happening. He's been in the job for 11 years, and as of recent times, even though they have been consistently making finals, his game plan just does not stack up in September. And to understand why, I'm going to show you this video I found on the AFL Reddit. It was made by a Port supporter, so shout out to them. I'm not actually sure if the user was the one who created the video or if it was a video from social media, but there was no link, so I'm just going to assume that it was the user that posted this on Reddit that created the video, and I think it gives a pretty good explanation as to why Ken Hinkley's game plan just doesn't work in finals.
Yeah, Port like to push up most of their team into their forward half. And the idea, I guess, is to trap the ball in their forward half and force as many inside 50s as possible. And hopefully that ends up with Port Adelaide kicking a goal. This plan is generally sound, but it breaks down against the best teams in the competition. So you can see here, all of Port Adelaide's team is essentially in their forward half. They're trying to force you to kick down the line here, and then they can use, a key defender or one of their defenders to bring the ball to ground, and then their midfield swarms on it, their halfbacks, they swarm on it and bring it quickly back inside 50. But literally all you have to do to beat Port Adelaide, and this happens in every finals, is just take them on. Run it out of defence, don't put the ball in the air, keep the ball on the ground, and you'll outrun them and you'll break their zone. Now, the issue with playing this forward press is when teams actually do that, they leave Port Adelaide's defence incredibly exposed. It essentially leaves one of Zirk Thatcher, Alir, or Asava Radaglia one-on-one with a key forward, which isn't their strong suit, or you end up in a foot race with the opposition smalls back to the goals, which is exactly what just happened in this passage of play here. And against a team like Geelong, if you've got a weaker defence, you don't want to leave your players in one-on-one situations with either Jeremy Cameron, Tyson Stengel, Graham Myers. It doesn't matter. In a team like Geelong, it needs to be a team effort to zone and shut these guys down, but our game plan doesn't allow for that. It exposes our.
So what's next for Port Adelaide? Well, they've got Hawthorn at the Adelaide Oval in a semi-final next week, and they just absolutely must win that game if Ken Hinkley wants to keep his job. It's going to be a struggle for them. I'm going to be tipping the Hawks at this stage because I think that Hawthorn is going to slice through their forward press with they've got some elite kicks in that team, Hawthorn, and I really don't think Port Adelaide are going to be capable of winning that game. They got completely found out against Geelong. Their confidence is going to be completely sapped, and they're really going to struggle to win that game. On the Friday night of the first week of the finals, Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs did battle in what was the most anticipated matchup of the weekend. In some ways, the match did disappoint, but in other ways it didn't. And it certainly didn't if you were a Hawthorn fan, as the Hawks collected their first finals win since 2015. Hawthorn really have had a remarkable year this year. Sam Mitchell has completely turned around this club within only a few seasons of him coaching, and the fact that they've made finals and now won a final at the MCG after starting the season 0-5 is incredible. The impacts that their recruits have had this season, Massimo D'Ambrosio, Jack Ginnivan, Marbia Chol, it really is incredible. They are now one of, if not the most exciting team to watch in the competition. The way they play with so much flair and dare and excitement, it really is incredible to watch. And they play with some personality too. It's always nice to see personality in the game. Their goal celebrations are always fun to watch. They clearly enjoy playing footy, and it is enjoyable to watch a team that genuinely does enjoy playing footy. Nick Watson and Jack Ginnivan were at their best on Friday night. Well, definitely Nick Watson. He kicked a career-high 4 goals. Jack Ginnivan with that goal late, celebrated by drinking an imaginary can of beer. Obviously, he'd been at the pub just the night before, which created a little bit of controversy, which I don't think there was anything worth fussing over about in that. But overall, it was just a fantastic performance from Hawthorn, and their fans really couldn't have asked for anything else. As for the Bulldogs, well, it was a very disappointing result for them. They were in it up until about half-time, then the Hawks just kicked away, and really, they never really looked like winning it in the second half. Now, Luke Beveridge has drawn a bit of criticism from this game and some of the moves he made during the game, specifically about Marcus Bontempelli. During the second and third quarter, when the game was on the line, Marcus Bontempelli spent a lot of time up forward rather than in the guts where he usually plays and usually has a big impact. This drew eyebrows from Kane Corns, who brought it up on the Sunday Footy Show, and I think rightfully so. I don't understand the logic at all behind putting Marcus Bontempelli forward when you're losing momentum, the game is on the line. He's not going to be able to do anything in the forward line if the Dogs can't get it out of the middle and get it down to him. He has to go straight into the guts and try and win back the momentum of that game, because he is very capable of doing that. And we saw early in the last quarter, he kicked a goal and then he almost kicked another goal running out of the centre square. He could have single-handedly turned that game around if he was put into the midfield earlier in the game. But for whatever reason, Luke Beveridge pulled a bevo and just decided against all logic to put him in a position which was going to have no impact on the game at that very point in time. And I think he rightfully copped criticism for it. Aside from that, where the Bulldogs lost this game was just they simply didn't apply as much pressure as the Hawks. The Hawks were manic all night long. They laid 11 more tackles than the Dogs despite having 84 more disposals than them. That is quite a significant number. 84 more disposals, 25 more contested possessions, and what's more, the Hawks had a really good disposal efficiency of 75.9%, which was quite a bit higher than the Dogs on 69.6%. So even with all that extra ball, the Hawks were just far more efficient by foot and by hand. I know I certainly noticed it throughout the night. Their kicking ability was just superb. They just seemed to be able to cut lines cut through the middle of the ground, take on the game so effortlessly, and the Bulldogs just weren't able to replicate it. So as a result of this game, the Dogs have been eliminated from this final series while the Hawks go on to play Port Adelaide in a semi-final. That is going to be a huge matchup. I'm going to be tipping them to win that one at this stage. I think they're just on an absolute roll right now. If they played like they did against the Bulldogs, I think they should have no troubles dealing with Port Adelaide, because Port, after that loss against Geelong, I imagine they're probably going to be in a bit of a rut. And the question needs to be asked, can Hawthorn go all the way? I think that win definitely signalled them as a serious premiership threat. If they can beat Port Adelaide, well, anything's possible. On Saturday afternoon, it was the 4th Sydney Derby final. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to catch all of this game, so I'm not going to go too deep into this one. However, I will just say that last quarter was insane from both teams. GWS were hanging on for dear life. I honestly thought they defended pretty well, all things considered. Like, we were coming at them, we were charging at them, and they almost held on. I thought for a while there they would hang on. I thought when Callum Ward kicked that goal, because I did see most of the last quarter, I thought we were done. But then enter Isaac Heaney. How good is Isaac Heaney? Oh my god, he was incredible. Thank goodness Toby Bedford was not playing, because he likely would have tagged either him or Warner, and Warner also played very well in the last quarter, 13 disposals, and helped set up that goal that Heaney levelled the scores with. He kicked a long ball out of the back line, which Tom Papley managed to get to ground. So if Toby Bedford had have played this game, it is most likely that we would have lost. In fact, I think we almost certainly would have lost. He would have nullified either Chad Warner or Isaac Heaney, or potentially Errol Goulden. But anyway, I'm just glad that we had the week off after that one, because that looked like a bruising affair. There was a bit of biff in the game. Tom Papley and Toby Green, who else? I reckon every single neutral supporter in the AFL was probably hoping that both players lost that fight. But anyways, I'm not going to dwell on that game too much more, because I can't really analyse what I didn't see. Week 1 of the final series concluded on Saturday night with Brisbane taking on Carlton at the Gabba. This game probably has the least to talk about of all the games. At one stage, it did look like it was going to be an all-time smashing for the ages. Brisbane were up 60-0. Carlton were very nearly held scoreless for an entire half of footy. They were the first team to be held scoreless at quarter time in a final since North Melbourne back in 1974. They were on track to break all sorts of records, not the records that they would want to break. Luckily for their sake, they managed to kick a couple of goals late in that first half, and then they were pretty good in the second half. I reckon Brisbane took their foot off the brakes a little bit, and Carlton ended up bringing the margin back to a respectable 27 points, which is still far from ideal considering that they're eliminated from finals now, and they never really got close in this game. They had a few opportunities at the start of the second quarter to score, but they just couldn't connect with their midfields and their forward line, and then they had a little mini surge during the third quarter, but it only ever got back to as close as 31 points, and they were never going to mount that 60-point lead. Once again in this game, inaccuracy was a bit of a problem for Brisbane. They seemed to get a bit nervous when Carlton made a bit of a fight back, and they just started making really uncharacteristic mistakes in front of goal and around the ground as well. They did what they needed to. They're off to a semi-final, but they're going to be playing GWS, and I don't think that they're going to be able to beat them. I still think that the Giants could easily win the flag this year despite losing the qualifying final. I think that they have the list to do that. While Brisbane, if they make it to the prelims, I would say it's unlikely they beat Geelong. Well, that is going to bring us to the end of this video. I hope you did all enjoy. Let me know what your thoughts on the first week of the 2024 final series were. It was a pretty crazy week of footy for multiple reasons. Also, let me know what you thought of this video. As always, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.